establishing central influence and preparing a flexible development scheme. Developing this knight immediately challenges white's central ambitions and opens flexible pawn structure possibilities. Solidifying central space, white prepares to contest the d5 square and develop pieces harmoniously. Opening the kingside diagonal for the bishop, this move elegantly prepares for solid development and a robust pawn structure. Developing this knight solidifies control of central squares and prepares for rapid development, aiming for a classic queen's Indian setup. Developing the bishop to a pinning square immediately challenges white's central pawn structure and prepares for potential piece exchanges. Reinforcing the center allows for king safety and prepares development, while subtly challenging black's bishop. This maneuver aims to prepare for fianchettoing the dark-squared bishop, potentially creating long-range pressure against white's center. Developing the knight to e2, while seemingly passive, aims to prepare a quiet pawn push or potentially support a later queenside expansion, sacrificing immediate central control for future options. Developing the bishop to the queenside stabilizes this flank and prepares for potential central pawn advances, while reinforcing the f6 knight's safety. Proactively challenging black's bishop on b7, this creates potential weaknesses along the queenside's diagonal, influencing pawn structure development. Safely developing, the bishop consolidates its position, preparing for castling and contributing to central influence without immediate commitment. Pushing forward, white claims central space, forcing black to react and potentially compromise their pawn structure. Safeguarding the monarch becomes the immediate priority after white's pawn thrust, securing a vital escape square for the king. Shifting the knight to g3 aims to support a kingside pawn storm and potentially open lines towards the enemy king. Challenging white's central pawn structure, black boldly advances the queenside, aiming to disrupt white's development and gain space. Capturing the pawn immediately simplifies the position, opening lines while also potentially offering white a central pawn majority. Opening the f-file, black's king finds itself exposed to potential diagonal pressure. Sacrificing the knight opens clear attacking lines towards black's castled position. Asserting central influence, black aims to solidify the pawn chain against white's queenside expansion. Unleashing a knight to a central outpost, disrupting black's pawn structure and eye on the weakened king. Reclaiming development tempo, this bishop repositions to a safer diagonal, eyeing the d5 outpost and preparing for pawn advances on the queenside. Unleashing a central pawn thrust, white aims to seize initiative and fracture black's fragile pawn structure. Unleashing the queen to c7 fortifies the kingside pawn structure and prepares for potential queenside counterplay, embracing the inherent complexities of this queen's Indian setup. This maneuver aims to disrupt black's queenside pawn structure and exploit the open b-file. Reclaiming the pawn with the queen solidifies the queenside and prepares for future central pawn pushes, but watch out for white's active knight. Suddenly, white injects a dynamic pawn thrust, aiming to disrupt black's camp and seize central control. This thrust aggressively challenges white's central control, seeking to untangle black's pieces and potentially exploit weaknesses around the d6 knight. Solidifying the central grip and preparing to contest the d-file, this move aims to neutralize black's initiative and build a robust queenside presence. Disrupting white's central dominance, this pawn advance challenges the bishop's diagonal influence. Reclaiming central influence, white repositions the knight, aiming to bolster the queenside and prepare a kingside attack. Exchanging knights here unlocks the c-file for potential pressure and disrupts white's central control. Opening the b-file creates immediate pressure on black's queenside pawn structure. Sacrificing a bishop for pawns often signals desperation. Watch for white's king safety now. Asserting control over the semi-open b-file, this initiative aims to exploit black's underdeveloped queenside and create counterplay. Suddenly unleashing the queen to c6 intends to disrupt white's central control and pressure the b3 pawn, igniting tactical possibilities. Unleashing the rook aims to exploit the exposed king and potentially open lines for attack down the g-file. Sacrificing the bishop here is a bold gamble, potentially opening lines but leaving your king exposed. Liberating the king from the shadow of the doubled pawns opens avenues for counterplay. Unleashing the rook aims to activate it on the semi-open f-file, challenging white's vulnerable monarch. Unleashing a direct assault on the vulnerable black king, threatening a swift checkmate with combined pieces. The queen abandons its defense of the b-pawn, potentially creating weaknesses in the queenside structure if white can exploit the open files. Focusing the queen's firepower toward the kingside now, aiming to exploit the exposed black monarch and shattered pawn structure. Shifting the knight to c6 aims to contest the d4 square and prepare for potential pawn breaks, but overlooks the immediate threat on the queenside. Sharpening the attack on the queenside while centralizing the queen for future action. Asserting control over the f-file aims to activate dormant pieces and challenge white's exposed king. Initiating a dangerous knight sortie towards the kingside, probing for weaknesses. Securing the king from immediate threats and preparing for potential queen exchanges, a vital defensive consolidation. Repositioning the rook to the g-file offers better protection for the king and eyes the potential for central pawn breakthroughs. Stepping onto the queenside, this knight aims to disrupt white's queenside pawn structure and potentially create new attacking avenues. Securing the monarch's escape route from the encroaching dark-squared danger. Shifting the queen to this active square bolsters the attack on white's weakened kingside pawns. Redeploying the knight to a more active square, aiming to disrupt black's queenside initiative and pressure the weakened pawn structure. Seizing the pawn opens a daring diagonal, but exposes your queen to immediate threats. Simplifying the position by exchanging queens after the doubled pawns forces black to defend diligently against the open files. Opening lines to the king, this pawn sacrifice opens critical diagonals and forces immediate king repositioning. Opening the f-file offers attacking potential, but weakens your king's immediate defenses. Recapturing the pawn opens up the d-file and centralizes the rook, aiming to exploit white's exposed king. Navigating the weakened kingside, this knight repositions for potential central skirmishes or queenside pressure. Solidifying the king's defense, g6 prepares to shelter the monarch from further intrusion. Exploiting the open files now with the rook, aiming to pierce black's weak pawn structure. Consolidating the king's safety becomes paramount, with the d-file now open for potential threats. Unlocking the central files, this rook surge prepares to pierce black's defenses with immediate, aggressive intent. Attempting to pry open the kingside, but sacrificing valuable pawn structure in the process. Unleashing the rook forces a king retreat, simplifying the position and opening critical attacking lanes. Recapturing the rook solidifies black's central pawn structure, a crucial step in navigating the upcoming endgame with diminished material. Capturing the pawn opens a critical file for the rook, putting immediate pressure on black's queenside pawns. Preserving queenside space is paramount, as this pawn advances to contest the open file. The knight's bold foray to d6, a dangerous outpost, immediately challenges black's exposed kingside. Trading the bishop opens a crucial diagonal for your rooks, aiming to exploit the weakened kingside. Liberating the d-pawn unlocks attacking potential by creating a protected passed pawn, a significant endgame advantage.